Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
Hey everybody, it's Doug with Youth Worker on Fire again, and I'm really excited about this interview. Sarah used to be one of our students in student ministry, and her family, we grew up with her family, and she grew up with us being the youth workers at her church until she became an adolescent, and she actually was part of middle school, high school ministry, and those things. Well, she is all grown up now. I was on LinkedIn, and I saw one of her posts, and so we reached out to her, and when she came to town again, because now she lives in the Atlanta, Georgia area, we got together and got to catch up and talk, and she said some things right off the bat that I thought, she needs to be on this podcast and hear the influences of student ministry on her and just the great person that she is and the life that she's leading. Sarah's name was Sarah Cooke. Now she has a very interesting name as a doctor because she's a doctor, and her name now is Friend. And so, don't you want a doctor friend as your doctor? I think so. Anyway, it's just my thought. I don't know. It just sounds like this is a good thing. So it's Dr. Cooke Friend. And so she moved to Atlanta. She was at Emory University. She is a assistant professor there. If I get any of this wrong, Sarah, just stop me. She also is a doctor of oncology, which is where she ended up, and she will tell you how she ended up in the realm of oncology. And for those of you who don't know what an oncologist is or oncology, they deal with cancer patients. That's what Sarah does now. Her husband, Nick, is a businessman. They've had some travels recently, and they have a love story. The Bible is full of love stories. Student ministry is full of love stories. So hopefully we're going to get to that part tonight. And by the way, she comes from a family of doctors. I don't know how many families you know that both grandfathers on both sides are doctors. The uncles are doctors. Her brothers are doctors. So there's three of them in her family, her and her two younger brothers. They're all three doctors now. Just a very unusual thing. And so her mom, Kim, and her grandmother are not doctors. And I guess they're the ones who kept the sanity in the house. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely.
Kept everybody calm.
Yes. Kept us all focused.
Kept you all focused. That's right. So, Sarah, one of the first things you said when I saw you at the coffee shop where we met, you talked about Colleen, first off, my wife, and you talked about the great things she taught you in discipleship. Tell me why you talked about Colleen right off the bat before we go to family and about discipleship. How did that all come up, and why do you think of that? What was the effects on your life?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Doug. You've been an important part in my life, as you know. Yes, both through ministry, also were the one who married Nick and I, and have always been a very special part of our family. And, so was Colleen. She was my role model. She was my mentor in our youth ministry, and she has just always been a great friend and a good leader. She showed really good values, and just some of the stories that she had dissected when we were in our youth ministry. I can remember some really hard things that I've never even heard taught before that she just really, dove deep into and sort of had us all learn about. And I still remember them to this day. Some of the specific teachings that she gave us with some of the kings of Israel, and just some of the good, the bad, and they just kind of stuck with me, just how we're all human, and nobody's perfect, and we all really just need to rely on God, and I think she just really exuded that in her life, and just a really nice person to teach us and to help go through life with. So I've always felt a good attachment to Colleen.
And that's good. And it's really interesting that you remember any part of those teachings later in life. I mean, you're a very intelligent person. I understand that. But still, there's a lot of water under the bridge, a lot of learning, a lot of different things. But you remembered part of what she taught you. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen often from adolescence, from your teenage years. We remember the effects people had on us, but not necessarily what they said. I thought that was just pretty cool. And that's what hit me first when we first started talking. Well, tell us about your family, though. Why medical? You've got all these doctors in your family. Why did you end up going that route yourself?
It's true. Almost everyone in my family is a physician, and that's sort of the conversation at the table. Everyone, we knew what being on call was like. We knew how working hard and really taking care of patients was really important. And I think that was just the conversation that we've had. My mom was very good about making sure that we got good grades and that we studied and that we ate healthy and exercised so we could think our best. And so while I wasn't pushed specifically to be a doctor, I also knew that that was my, natural inclination to sort of favor the sciences. And so as I was in college, actually at the time I met Nick, my husband, he had said, if you go to medical school and we get married, you're going to be Dr. Friend if you take my name. And I told him at the time, a lot has to happen, right? Because he was my first boyfriend in college, and I was like, a lot has to happen for us to not only get married, but also me to go to medical school. And then flash forward a couple of years later, and then I did get in, and sort of that's exactly what happened. But I think that when I was going through school, I was interested in lots of things. And at the time, I found various classes outside of sciences also interesting. However, I just really felt a strong attachment and affinity to like the science crowd. And when I was learning about different pathways and the organic chemistry, I thought was just so much fun. I was a tutor for that. So it just sort of naturally gravitated there, I think. So not only did I just favor the content, I favor the people. And I think that's really what drew me into that, in addition to having learned about the sciences at the dinner table. I also favored that when I was in college. So ultimately, I went that route. But I was trying to keep an open mind, but it just pulled me in.
But you were telling me that you were not in oncology first. Tell me the process. How does all that happen? And the reason I'm bringing that up, the reason that's important is, number one, your faith. Number two, your faith in the medical field. You were telling me that there was like a process that you didn't just jump into oncology.
Yeah. So interestingly, oncology is paired with hematology. So if you decide to do hematology, if you decide to do oncology, you have to do hematology. And I had found out while in medical school that my family has a clotting disorder. And so as I was learning about the clotting disorder, that both me, my brothers, my dad, and actually my mom, we all have this disorder. And as I was learning about it, when I would go through school, it was really the hematologist, when I would mention it, they were, oh, yeah, that's really cool. And here, go see some patients that have what you have, and let me talk to you about it. So I think I naturally gravitated towards that, because not only did I want to learn about the diseases that I had, but also I thought it was really neat that people showed special interest and made it sound fun and exciting. And so I was initially drawn to the hematology side of the field. And then, within that, you also treat the oncology patients, so the cancer patients, and learn really quickly that there's a lot of sadness and a lot of, just a lot of people that need help and are struggling with these really difficult life decisions and deep. And I think I was drawn into that as well. But certainly the two came together, which doesn't make sense why, the blood clotting disorder has anything to do with a cancer diagnosis. But for whatever reason, the way that the medical systems are set up, the two of them go together. So in me deciding on hematology that went along with oncology, and I went with it. And, it was really, really, really satisfying while just soul enriching. I mean, it's just the most intense field I could ever imagine being in.
I remember you talking about this too, and you have a team of doctors that train under you. Is that right?
In my team specifically, we'll have rotating students come in, but we also work really closely with our amazing nursing staff, our MAs, our PAs, and our nurse practitioners. And so we have a group around us, and there are people that will rotate through, whether it's a student nurse or a student pharmacist. But we do have our team that help us to take care of patients. And I'm sure every field has the same sort of setup, but in oncology, it takes a team for sure.
But they like you to do something that they don't want to do. And by the way, if you this is not video. The great thing, if it were video, is you'd see Sarah. Sarah's got a great smile. She always has. And so she's a person that you probably, if you're going to have bad news, you want to hear it from her. She's caring. You can see it in her eyes. You can see it in her smile. It's just who she is. Certain things happen to patients, and they don't want to tell them. And so what happens with you?
Yeah. So as an oncologist, you get calls in the hospital that will be a CT scan in somebody that had no known medical problems who came in for a kidney stone. And they will want you to go in and deliver really bad news and say something like, it looks like there's cancer that has spread to the liver. Or they will want you to say, I need you to tell this patient that we need a biopsy because these findings are suspicious. And so it's often our team that has to go through the hospital and really deliver heavy, heavy, heavy news. And it's really hard. It's really hard. It's hard emotionally. There's a difference between, wanting to just tell people what they want to hear, which is just that everything is going to be okay. And hopefully it will be. But at the same time, you also have this commitment to the truth and to try to say what you think will be helpful to let the family and the patients prepare for this news, right? So if it is going to be a life-changing diagnosis, you don't want to sugarcoat this because you want them to be able to make the adjustments that they need to prepare for it. And so it's a very intense conversation at times, and it really is a heavy burden. And you have to practice it, and you have to just strengthen yourself. It can be tough. So yeah. So as a person who takes call in the hospital, a lot of our hospital work is delivering bad news to families.
I mean, that makes you a very strong person. I mean, I'm not saying makes you a strong person. I'm saying you are a strong person.
Thank you.
And for people to lean on you to do that, it's very difficult. I mean, I cannot imagine how people forget that doctors are humans too.
Many times it's kept me up at night, crying at night or just being sad and having trouble sleeping. I mean, that part is hard, really hard.
Tell me your worst moment and your best moment in the medical field.
I would say probably the best moment is, especially after you've gone through the chemo journey with a patient who's, really fighting for their life, and you have the ability to tell them that those scans are clear. Looks like the cancer is at least at present not there. And, it's as best as we can tell, the disease is in remission. And that's just really exciting news. Worst moments have to be telling, especially young people with families, that unfortunately they're dying. And then at some point, there's going to be nothing we can do. And when you speak those words and you just immediately bring tears to somebody's eyes, I mean, there's nothing worse than that. And, you realize that you have a lack of control over this disease. It's not something that you can deliver the same chemotherapy regimen to 3 different people. And, you really don't control outcomes, right? You control the plan, and you can make sure that you're doing standard of care recommendations, and you're trying your best to give good advice on what you think is going to be the best thing for this patient. But at the end of the day, you have no control over the disease outcomes. And so having to tell a young person that they're dying and going to leave their family is the hardest part, I think.
Oh, I'm cannot imagine. Cannot imagine. Let's go back in time a little bit. Let's talk about when you asked Jesus in your heart. How old were you, and what were the events? Or tell us your story.
I think it must have been in elementary school. And what I remember is I remember being in Sunday school with, I think it was Diane Treen, and she was one of my teachers, and she taught our Awana group. And I remember her just talking to me. And, I've always felt like God was an important part of my life. So I've always, felt his presence, but I definitely think it was sometime in elementary school when I made that decision.
That's neat to know that was Diane. You have a name. You remember the person. Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever told her that, but yeah.
How did that affect you in middle school and high school? How did student ministry affect you?
We got really lucky, Doug, because you made a really, really, really great program. I mean, I can just say, being from small town Florida, having never seen snow, and then all of a sudden having you take us on ski trips and, fly us to other countries to do mission trips. I mean, it really opened my worldview and expanded my horizons. And I mean, I've never heard of a program taking, young kids skiing and to perform mission trips in Mexico. I mean, it really, I was just really opened. My eyes were really opened by that. I mean, I really had an appreciation for just, little things after some of your trips. I mean, everything from water,
Yeah, right.
electricity. I mean, and I think you realize like, oh, I'm really thankful for my house and my family. But when you see that there's people that live with so much less, and you just it really changes you. And I'm extremely fortunate that I had some of those experiences.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Do you remember which Mexico trip you went on?
Yeah, I was trying to think about that too. I've been on several, but
Did you do the Dominican as well, or did you
yes,
Mexico only?
that was
You
the one we did the
Dominican.
school, right? That was the one
Yes,
we built the
yeah.
school. Yeah, so I definitely did that one, and I did at least one of the Mexico trips as well.
Yeah, the Mexico one you went to and built homes.
Yes, we built homes, and then we did. We helped to build that school, and we just really, really, just really great experiences that we had, and I'm so happy. It felt like we made an impact. I kept a pen pal for a small amount of time, and that was a really cool experience.
Oh, you did? I didn't know about that. You had a pen
Yeah,
pal, huh?
yeah. I mean, sort of. I don't think I was the best at keeping in touch, but I did for a while keep his photos, and I tried to write it, but it really did impact me. It did, and I try to do the program where we try to support, some children. But it just really reminds me of the time that I had, and it really did make an impact.
I do remember your ski trip too. I remember your lesson.
That's when I realized, oh yeah, because again, I had never really been in snow,
Right.
and I didn't realize. So flash forward as a doctor, I think what I must have is a syndrome called Raynaud's, and your hands and feet just get extremely cold in the cold. So I was skiing in jeans because what was I thinking actually buying the things that were on the list? I didn't come in with a ski coat. I came in with jeans, and I just went out skiing, and I fell in the snow, of course, because I didn't know how to ski. And, I was soaking wet in the cold, and I just was near frostbitten. And so I remember after that trip, I realized, oh man, my body just does not tolerate cold in the same way. And so I, from then on, have had a nice big box of hand warmers, and I stuff them in my hands and feet. Definitely if I ever go into the snow, but even if it gets really cold in the air conditioning, sometimes
Well,
I do that.
and right, and there you are in Atlanta, and Atlanta is really hot in the summer, but it's really cold
I know,
in the
for
winter.
me it's really cold. Yep,
Sure
and I
is.
have my hand warmers, and I use them. But I learned at that trip, and I would never have known had I not tried to ski. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. That's so funny. And I work with a pharmacist now. She was from South Florida, and she actually the keys. And so at 90, if it's not 90 and above, she's cold. And so it gets a little colder than that.
I
where
can
you
feel
are.
that.
Here you are with your two children. You're going about life. He's a businessman. You're on call, and you're assistant professor as well at Emory University. And then you guys end up going to Japan. And I noticed that it was a partly business trip and partly he completely ran a marathon, right?
Yeah, I always tell him, I'm like, well, at least, I mean, there's worse things that could have been his midlife crisis than decide to start to run. I mean, he's very driven. And so deciding to run a marathon was very brave on his part. I have no desire to run a marathon myself, but he, like I said, he's a very driven person. He hired a running coach and he put himself on this running plan. And he decided that he wanted to run all of these world majors, which has taken him to Berlin and will take him to New York next. And so Tokyo was this last month, and he did great. It was not his best time, but he still finished, which was all I cared about. And he had a really good time despite the jet lag. And yeah, it's just a cool hobby. Again, it involves exercise, which is nice. But I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. I mean, it's a big deal, and timing everything from the right time to try to how many of these gel goo packs to eat to get the right amount of energy without feeling nauseous. I mean, it's all, they have it down to a science, and it's something he's figured out and has really started to enjoy. And as a spectator, I like watching him, and just walking the course would be plenty for me.
Yeah, I understand that. I was a runner for years, but nothing more than 3 to 5 miles. 5 miles, that was my max. And I watch people do that, and I go, "You are good for you."
Yeah, exactly.
But here you are in Tokyo. Tell me about that. What was the most exciting thing about Tokyo?
Tokyo was cool. I think for me, this may sound not that exciting, but I have glamorized the idea of eating pufferfish. And this idea of eating a fish that could kill you and is poisonous has been something that I've thought about in the past. And we did a sushi tour, so we could go around the market, and one of our tour guides was actually a chef, and she knew the family that had filleted this pufferfish, and she said, "Yeah, try it." And I had this moment where I thought, "Oh, is this like really bad decision that I'm going to do this and then I'm going to die eating pufferfish and not see my family?" And then I said, "You know what? I'm not going to die eating pufferfish. I want to do it. I am a sushi fan. I want to see if it's that good." And so I tried the pufferfish, but there's a moment right after you eat it where you kind of Google the symptoms just in case. And then you figure out, okay, at what point would I start feeling dizzy and start to have symptoms, which thankfully never happened because I'm here. But yeah, it was, that part to me was the scariest and the most intense part. But the fish itself, it's okay. I'll tell you, if you don't love fish, and just stick with tuna. I mean, it was not worth it.
Was
I'm
it
glad I
fishy
did it because I
tasting?
made it, but it's not the best fish I've had.
Oh, I'm glad you're alive.
Yes.
Let me say that. Happy about that.
Nick wouldn't do it. He actually said after I took the bite.
So we got to have
said,
one parent left.
That's exactly what he said. I'm like, I'm not going to die. He's like, well, just in case.
Just in case.
That's
So
what
you
he
say
said.
it tasted a little fishy, though. Is that right?
Yes. It's a little bit chewy. If it would be the texture of what I would think a jellyfish would taste like.
Oh,
like
my
chewy
goodness.
And like
And
crunchy,
people
maybe.
eat this. Why?
I don't know.
Okay. But now you know.
I know. For real sushi connoisseurs, I'm sure it's really great. And there's restaurants that feature this fish in many dishes. And apparently, it's a really good delicacy and people really like it. And there's a way to eat it slowly, so you really bring out the flavors. But for me, it was more just like surviving the experience.
Let's do it and survive. That's right. Okay. Well, hardest adjustment in Japan.
I think by far the time zone. You're sort of sad to leave your family, of course, but we also have really great family support between Nick's parents watching the kiddos plus Nick's sister who flew in kindly to watch them. So we had enough support to get them to and from school. So I wasn't necessarily worried about them, but the time zone was the biggest adjustment because you're awake at the wrong times and then you're sleeping, when you should be trying to stay awake. And it just, the time zone takes you a long time to adjust.
And then you're ahead of day. You're ahead of day there.
Yes.
You're a day ahead, and then you come back and you're a day behind.
It's confusing. You land and it's, you leave Sunday and then just Monday is gone. And then it's now Tuesday and you just skipped Monday altogether. We got to learn about the geisha. We did a geisha tour and that was kind of fun. So yeah, I mean, it was really neat. I mean, it was a country I just thought was very charming, very, very clean. A lot of people, a lot of personal responsibility. People thought it was very important not to litter. So people would carry their trash home. It even went as far as if you got a Starbucks coffee, they did not want you to throw the Starbucks coffee trash in the trash can next door. Like it's really sort of this unspoken rule that you really need to throw the trash in the same restaurant you got it from or just take it home. So, I think they gave us a pass because we didn't know all these rules in the beginning, but that just the city was just so clean. No smell of pee. People are very polite. No one's pushing you, shoving you. I mean, you felt like it was just a really unique, great experience. And like I said, very, very clean, especially in Tokyo where it was such a busy city.
Fun facts about you. Tell me about your love story, you and Nick, though. You kind of told us a little bit about it. Give me a bit about how y'all met and then how y'all fell in love.
So we actually met the first day of college at Emory, and we became really good friends. And then toward the end of the first year, we started dating. And one of our first dates, he thought it was very surprising that I had never been to New York. And, I came from Eustis. I mean, I have not, been to New York, but there's a lot of places I hadn't been. And, so for him, he surprised me one day with tickets to go to New York. And at the time, we didn't really have money to stay in a hotel. So we went, and this sounds ridiculous when I'm telling you this story, but this was, I think, probably my favorite date we've ever gone on because it was just so special. We flew to New York. We landed. He knew I was obsessed with peanut butter. And at the time, there was this peanut butter restaurant where all the food items had peanut butter on them somehow, whether it was just the peanut butter and jelly or whatever it was. All the different items had peanut butter. So we went to this peanut butter restaurant and I am just like floored. I'm floored to be in this really cool and amazing city, which is just so different from where I came from. And then we went ice skating and we just got to walk around. It was just so cool. And then we flew back like a couple hours later.
That day. So it was a one day. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is really romantic.
It was, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just was like, wow, the world just immediately became smaller after that experience. And I would have never thought to do that for anyone. So that was the most memorable date. And actually, one of my really good friends had told me, that it's really important that you not settle with the first person that you date. And after that, she goes, well, okay, maybe it's okay.
Maybe this one. Maybe you found the one, one, unlike
exactly.
anybody else.
So, and then we did long distance. So we dated through college, and then he ended up actually going to New York to work in marketing. And I went to Florida State University for my medical school. And then I stayed in Orlando for internal medicine. And then when he actually met me, he actually flew down and we ended up getting married while in Florida. And then together we went to New Mexico, where I did my hematology oncology fellowship to be a cancer trained doctor. And then after that, we came back to Emory. So that's where we had met. And we thought it was a great city to live in because it has an airport and we could easily fly to go visit his family, drive down or fly down to come visit my family. So
who fell in love first? Who knew?
At some point, one of my friends told him, "Hey, Sarah likes you." And then he told her, "Well, I don't really like her." So,
Oh
yeah,
no.
it was
Oh
very
no.
awkward, but I'm also not the type that's going to like chase after somebody that doesn't like me. So, I don't really know how to answer it. Maybe I liked him first, but it was very short-lived.
So is there anything else you want to leave with people? You want to tell them that maybe you never get asked, but you wish people would ask you?
What I would say is, just as somebody who works in the healthcare system, I would just say that just try to remember that your doctors, your nurses, your MAs, the team members that are doing your blood pressure, or your phlebotomists that are drawing your blood work, remember that they are all human too, and that they all have to. Some of them have their own medical issues and cancer diagnoses. So I would just remind everybody to treat them with kindness. And doctors are, a lot of them, overworked and behind, and they're stressed. The stress of COVID that hit the world hit them as well. So I would just say, bring a book. You're probably going to be waiting a little bit longer, but if you decide to lose your temper while in the waiting room, and then remember that's a place of healing, you're going to give that negative energy to the waiting room, and it's going to negatively influence the healing of the patient. So some of the best people that I've loved to work with are those that are just so kind and so compassionate and so loving, and I just can sometimes even sense the stress of us when we're overworked, and just be so kind. So I would just say that from the doctoring system, that um, there's a lot of compassion that's needed. And I would just say, as a patient, especially if you are lucky enough to be the healthy one, you know then be kind. And if you're unhealthy, if you're somebody who really needs to be there and take up a lot of the doctor's time, then just know that they're giving that same time they're giving to you to someone else, and that might be why they're a little bit late. So just remember that same love that you show to your family and to your friends, like, try to show it in the healthcare setting too, because I'll just say, it's we do our best to take as good of care of patients as we can, but sometimes it's hard to meet all of the demands. And I have so many special, special, special patients that have, been my mentors. And a lot of it's just through them just behaving so beautifully in a situation that, most people would really be angry over. So just remember that your behavior matters.
Yeah, it does. And I've had the privilege of working with a lot of nurses and a few doctors over the years. And because of going from student ministry for 35 years full time and then going into the pharmacy field and delivering to a lot of these institutions, and what I've noticed, especially during COVID, medical teams were tired, that they were going through personal things with their families. They were going through.
Exactly.
And then, who do you like to hang out with most? People who are screaming and cursing at you?
Right.
Or do you like to hang out
Yeah.
with people who go, that are kind and go, thank you so much for helping me. I know that you have a life and you're human, and, the hours are long or brutal for the medical profession.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That is such a key thing for you to share. And thank you so much. What was your best moment ever? Do you remember a best moment?
I think that every CT scan that's clean, and someone who's gone through breast cancer, any mammogram that's clean, and then after you get through, your 5 year, your 6 year, and every year that goes by that you can celebrate with your patients is just a really exciting time. So I would say that the success would be trying to get people into the remission, and whenever they're there and you can prove it with CTs, et cetera, or just maybe they get to the end of their journey with their estrogen blocking pills and now they can take a break. And that is just very exciting. So, I mean, I celebrate what's important for patients. And if there's somebody who really wanted to go on that cruise and we got them there, sometimes that's a really exciting day. So I really try to celebrate the victories that are really important to patients, Because again, I try really hard to get to know them on that type of level where I know what's important to them. And, like I said, obviously remission is important, but then beyond that, there's the goals, the smaller goals of maybe getting to a specific event or just getting to the next mammogram. And all of that is just really exciting.
And this is such a different level to ask you about those good moments and those
I know,
than it is the
I know.
average person, because every decision you're making is life and death decisions. Every experience you're experiencing. Now, we are all, and you know this more than most, because you've committed your life to healing people. And so here you are telling about these things, and every moment, everything you do is life, healing, or it's life or death. And all of us are going through life and death experiences, and we don't even know it most of the time. But you know it every day.
I mean, it does appreciate things. It makes you appreciate, I don't know, every 5 years, that you're older is a gift. As you know, cancer is happening in young people and younger and younger. And, being 40 is a gift.
Hey, listen to you. Being 40 is a gift. That is something to hold on to for our listening audience, because our focus is anyone who deals with adolescents, especially youth pastors, especially youth workers. But we're also dealing with coaches and teachers and moms and dads, because you know what? If you have an adolescent, you're a youth worker. If you're a mom and dad or grandparent of an adolescent, you celebrate being 40, getting to 40. Most people don't understand that as a celebration, and it is in our life.
Exactly.
But listen, Sarah, I appreciate everything, all your time here. I appreciate you sharing your heart, and you have a lot that you're doing in this world. I don't know how you do it. I've talked to doctors before and go, when are you going to retire someday? And I've heard some of them say, maybe when I'm 80. Those are people that love doing it.
Right.
Maybe when I'm 80. And in fact, one of them said, I can do this till I'm at least 80. Oh, okay. All right. Anything you want to say to anybody else out there? Your parents, your grandparents?
Yeah, just thank you. Thank you to my family, my friends, and to you guys. And, for supporting me. This is it's been a really long journey for me. And, I'm so blessed to be where I am. And, even on my hardest days, it's a gift, because it's a gift to be there. It really is. And, I am so thankful for my family, and I'm so lucky to have my grandma. She's my last living grandma or grandpa of that generation. And I'm just every piece of wisdom I can glean from her, I'm just so thankful for the time.
Well, she is a wonderful person, and I know how much she loves you and her other grandchildren. And so tell her hello from me, and y'all have a good night together.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate you.
All right, Sarah, appreciate you, and I'll let you know when this comes out, okay?
Okay, looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll see y'all next time on Youth Worker on Fire.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.